You always got to find that next guy ready to go. This football game is quick, man. Like, there's always a hungry kid willing to get into that position. You can't get comfortable, is what I tell my guys. Just because you're committed and you're in, you ain't make it yet, right? You ain't made nothing, right? You ain't made any plays. You haven't shown anything on the field. Now you're here. Now let's get to work.
Welcome to Athlete Country Club, the podcast built for parents, athletes, and competitors chasing the next level. I'm your host, Marcus McMarion, former Division I quarterback, now founder of Athlete Country Club. I started this show because, like many of you, I had to learn the recruiting process the hard way, traveling up and down the state, spending thousands trying to figure out what actually works. Each week, we break it down through two powerful segments. First, Coach Talk. This is where we sit down with college coaches, director of player personnel, recruiters to uncover exactly what they look for when offering scholarships. No fluff, just the truth from people making the decisions. Second, Athlete CEO. Here we go beyond the field, into habits, training, and mindset that build elite performance and long-term success. You'll hear from strength coaches, nutritionists, sports psychologists, and former athletes who've turned their grind into greatness in business, leadership, and life. Because being an athlete isn't just about playing the game, it's about mastering it and building your legacy beyond it. So whether you're a parent trying to navigate recruiting or an athlete ready to level up, you're in the right place. Welcome to Athlete Country Club, where we turn potential into performance and performance into purpose. What's good, everybody? Welcome to Athlete Country Club. I'm your host, Marcus McMarion. Super excited for our guest today, one of my former teammates, Pat. One of the things I've learned, I feel like, as I've stayed around this game is just how small the coaching world is. I mean, like, no matter where you go, high school, college, or the next level, you're usually only one degree of separation away from someone who can change the trajectory of your entire career. I mean, one conversation, one relationship, one coach who believes in you early before the world ever even knows your name. And today feels like it's one of those kind of full circle moments for me. We're teammates back at Fresno State 2017, 18, a team that didn't just win games, but build an identity, a Mountain West championship, a Vegas Bowl, a locker room that believed in each other before the outside world did. And since then, you've taken, that same mindset into coaching. Kind of learned the craft at every level from your GA at Fresno State, GA quality control at Washington State, D-line coach at Central Washington, now stepping into your newest role as the defensive line coach at Portland State, kind of home of the Vikings, baby. Now you're back in the Valley, holding it down, looking for the next great Viking for sure. So, Pat, welcome to Athlete Country Club, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, I'm pumped, man. And I think it's so cool to kind of watch your transition from player to coach. I feel like a lot of athletes say they want to coach. Even me, I've thought about coaching. When you finish, it's kind of the next kind of natural progression, it almost feels like sometimes. But, for you, like, when did you feel the pull towards coaching? And, like, was it something you always saw yourself, or did it, like, reveal itself over time?
I would say it kind of revealed itself over time. Just kind of learning when I was playing at Fresno, kind of learning the game a little bit more. And obviously loving the game of football, I started coaching in high school. I just jumped in because I missed the game and I was just a volunteer right at Tumwater High School in Washington. And then I kind of, fell in love with the game, right? It just kind of took me in, and next thing you know, I just became, coaching, continued to coach high school. And then my journey continued on, like you said, to Fresno and Wazoo. So it kind of took me in a little bit, right? Just kind of learning the game throughout college, and then, through the volunteer role.
Yeah, for sure. And what did kind of a GA, at Fresno State, like, what did that teach you about the real work of coaching that most players never see?
It's definitely a grind, for sure. Being a GA is definitely a grind, but it's a good grind, I would say. It definitely taught me a lot. Right, it taught me the inside out of the game alone, right? Not just X and O's, but why are we doing a certain thing, right? Why are we playing this coverage, or why are we doing, these certain fronts? Why are we playing this certain scheme, versus an opponent? But it teaches you a lot, and it gives you a lot of hands-on opportunities. Just being able to draw scout cards, right? As a young GA, you kind of, you're able to block up stuff on cards, and then you see the picture and the protection start to form up as you put it on paper. Right. And I think that helped me a lot, right? Being able to sit down and just pick a bunch of those coaches' brains as well, right? Kind of seeing how, why they do certain things. That's most of the questions that I ask is, why? And then you kind of get to learn and see the bigger picture, right, as a GA. But it's definitely a grind, and you learn from those guys for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know we had a previous guest on, Quincy Poindexter, who's also from Fresno, and he kind of dropped little knowledge saying like he wishes that every player, no matter what sport, he plays basketball, but no matter what sport you're in, he wishes every player could be a coach. And I was like, man, I almost felt like when I was at Oregon State, I
Mm.
learned so much as a backup quarterback when I was on the headset because you're
It's
listening to the
different
coaches
things.
say stuff and you're like,
Yeah,
dang, I never even thought of it like that as a player.
never
You know, like
did.
it's just a whole
Exactly.
different perspective, you know, and like you obviously transition, you've seen different levels of it. I mean, like, how
Mm.
did your role like at Washington State in quality control like change the way you see, I mean, preparation and film and game planning?
I mean, again, it comes with a lot for sure, but being able to study film is one of the biggest things that I learned at Washington State. I was able to, fortunate to work with, really good people there. Coach Caligus and Coach Male were two good mentors for me at Wazoo, and just kind of speaking of the tech, like how technical the sport is, right? And especially just talking about D line play, right? You just talk about the footwork, the eyes progression, the technique, and then watching the film of other opponents. Like what are they giving away, right? What is the percentage of snaps or formations or whatever. Like we're playing big percentage ball sometimes too, that I've noticed at my time at Washington State and breaking down certain things, right? What are teams' favorite formations, right? What are teams' favorite alignment, right? You kind of see little things like that while you're watching film. What are their tendencies is kind of the biggest thing, right? How often is, number two on the football, what route concept they're going to run, right? And, some offenses does, tend to give it away, but some are really good at hiding it, right? You're trying to pick those guys' brain. You're trying to think like the offensive coordinator, right? As a defensive guy, like what is his next step is going to be, or what does he like to do, right? In certain situations.
Yeah, and I feel like that was the biggest just I mean, I'm sure you experienced it to some degree, but just kind of like, whoa, I'm playing big time football now. When I got to college, you know, and like you're actually watching film and that's I mean, you could only put so much energy and effort on the field. And there's actually rules and restrictions. You can't even practice that long, but it's like there's a
Yeah.
ton of things that are in the classroom that contribute to you being a good player. You know, like I feel like in high school, I mean, I watch tape, but I feel like in high school you watch tape and it's more of like
Mm.
it's a highlight tape. You're like, dang, that guy's good. You're like, oh, nice move. Like he juked that dude. Or like, you know, it's like you're
Yeah.
not really like intentionally watching it. Like if you were to
Yeah.
talk to like a high school athlete, like what are a couple things, or even 15-year-old Pat, I mean, like how are you watching film different now as a coach who's been at multiple levels versus when you were in high school?
Yeah, again, watching film right now is a little bit. Again, I talked about tendencies earlier, right? Guys are just watching what guys are doing, right? Just those big plays thing, like receivers making a big catch. But how often are you watching, his footwork coming off the ball, right? How often are you watching, how many kick step that offensive tackle is doing, right? Guys are just seeing certain things, but they're not seeing tendencies of what these guys kind of give away, right? And studying the film and studying your opponent, right? Like even when I tell my guys and I teach them film study, right? I always tell those guys, right, by the end of for next week, and you're ready to watch that opponent, like you should know what toothpaste he's using. That's how much you're studying your opponent, right? And I think film study is huge for these kids, and I think just being able to see the tendencies of what they do, right? And when I have my guys watch offensive linemen, like how often are they shooting their inside hand, right? Looking at those tendencies, right? If they're a deep setter or if they're a short setter, right? Are you looking at certain tendencies like that so you know what you're attacking, right? You already know your opponent on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so when Saturday comes, you already know what he's doing, right? So it's looking at those small tendencies and studying everything that he does, right, each and every week, leading up to the game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think we could both attest to the fact of there's nothing like studying something and you're like, okay, I'm like 95% sure this is going to happen. Then you get in the game and it happens, and you're like,
And it
whoa,
happens.
like okay,
Yeah.
like this is paying off. Like film is real. Like this is making a big difference. And
Yeah.
obviously, coaches have kind of their own. I mean, like identity in a sense. I mean, like every coach eventually develops a philosophy where it's not just about football, but about people. And I mean, for you as Coach Pat, now, I mean, like, how would you describe your coaching style to a recruit and their parents meeting you for the first time?
Well, when we're looking at a recruit in general, right, we're looking for the right character kids, right? When I talk about recruiting and recruiting the kids with the right character, we will check all the boxes and make sure this is the right kid we are bringing into the program, right? If we're all recruiting a kid, like we want to get to know the kid's family, right? What kind of background is he coming from, right? Because that's important to most kids, right? Where is he coming from? Make sure mom and dad feels like they're getting recruited as well. Like you want them to feel part of our family if we bring them in. And that also, gives the parents, a sigh of relief knowing that they're letting their kid go to these coaches that care about their kid. Right. And, just, working with our current coach, Coach Fisk now, he talks about the standard of our program and what we need to do to bring in the right kids. It starts off with the right character kid, right? Before we would talk about measurables and all that stuff, right? Stats, are we bringing the right culture guy to our program, right? To continue to build this in the right direction, right? And just talking with parents, they kind of enjoy that. They love that. They love that we're bringing in the right character kid, right? To do what we need to do to get the program going in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think it's a tough question to answer, and you could kind of say both, honestly.
Yeah.
But like, what matters more to you when you're evaluating defense alignment? Is it the physical traits, or is it the personal habits, kind of characteristic side of things?
I mean, more, I wouldn't say too much personal traits, but yeah, you can kind of say both, right? You are looking for, the right guy that, that kind of fits the scheme. But like to be honest with you, if I like, to find a right high effort dude, like I know guys are, some guys want those 6'4" D tackles, right? You would love to have those. Those are great dudes to have. But if there's a kid, undersized and he works his tail off, like I will recruit that kid. Like, and I'm not talking about the measurables. Like, if he's a dude, he's undersized, but he could play, he plays hard, I'm going to recruit him, man. And I think I've had luck with that, at prior schools, and I've seen that at prior schools, and it does work out. But like those undersized kids, you could also, definitely take a look at them, right? Those guys are hungry as well. But I think, it kind of goes hand in hand with both when it comes to recruiting the right defensive lineman, right? And I kind of split it, differently when I'm recruiting DTs, right? They got a, certain, size and character or size you want to bring, right? And same with the edges, right? You want them a little bit longer on the edges, right? But again, if those guys are a little undersized, like we're not afraid to recruit those guys, right? Especially if they're hard nosed players. And we've had luck with undersized D linemen, right? And those guys play their tails off.
Yeah, kind of talk to that a little bit because I remember like shooting you a couple DMs, and I try not to talk to coaches a ton during football season just because now I know I
Yeah,
don't talk to anyone during football season when I played.
for
So
sure.
if I reach out to coach and they don't hit me back right away, I don't even get offended because I'm like, bro, I didn't talk to anybody unless you were talking to
Yeah,
me how to break down UNLV. I didn't really care what you had to say. Like this
yeah.
is who I'm playing this week. But kind of talk to that though, more so like I remember messaging you kind of at
Mhm.
the end of the season, and you guys had a lot of success on the defense line with all conference guys, and they weren't the big 6'6", 295, like
For sure.
3% body fat guys, but the
Yeah.
guys, like if you're a football player, you're a football
It's
player.
a
Kind of
fact.
talk to why those guys were having success on the field and what they were able to do and accomplish.
I mean, those guys, they worked, man. Like, and they were eager to learn, which one was one of the biggest things. And they trust, what I brought to them. They trust the technique that I was teaching them, right? And all I asked for those guys was effort, and those guys played hard, right? So their effort, their play, and me teaching them the technique and me teaching them the game, right? I'm not just teaching them, technique of football, but I'm teaching them the ins and out of the game. I'm teaching them situational football as defensive linemen, right? They're kind of thinking that, hey, D line don't need to know certain things, but yeah, we need to know situational football. We need to know when it's, 3rd to 7, what the opponents are doing. We're just not taking on blocks. We're learning the game of football, and I'm teaching those guys that stuff, right? But those guys were, again, like you said, they were undersized guys. But as undersized guys, they worked a little bit harder, and that's exactly what they did, right? The D tackle that I had, was a freshman All American, won freshman of the year in the conference, and was a first team all conference. And the kid he moved up a level. Right now he's over at Boise State playing over at Boise. But I mean we've had a bunch of undersized guys that were just hungry and willing to play hard, and those are the kind of guys you want to work with.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, I think it's such an understated fact of just like the coachability, like being able to actually be coachable. I feel like we've both ran into guys that are just so talented, but don't even
Yeah,
sniff the field for coachability. Like, kind of talk to, like, what are some things that guys could be putting into action as far as making sure they're coachable? Like, how's that even evaluated from a
yeah,
coaching staff? Like, how do you evaluate coachability?
yeah. Big when it comes to the classroom is huge, right? And I think attentive in the classroom, right? Taking great notes, right? I think it plays really, it builds on the field, right? And I'm a big believer in. I always mess with my guys. I do check their notes in the meeting, right, to make sure they're not doodling while I'm talking, right. But I think those guys do a great job of taking great notes, and it shows. Like the guys that are taking great notes, it shows on the field, right. And I quiz those guys a lot, and it shows when they turn in their grids. I'm like, this kid understands, right, and I think he's ready to play. He had the right preparation to do so. Does that make sense? And I think the classroom is kind of where it starts, right? And kind of working with my guys, I realize a lot of them are more visual learner and hands-on learning, right? Teaching those guys, putting them on the board, right? Making them draw the X's and O's so they know where they're going, and it kind of helps them a little bit more to understand the game and slows it down. Right. And, just finding a guy, the coachability of a guy is a guy that is willing to take the coaching, digest it, and understand it, and then produce it on the field. That makes sense. And we got a bunch of guys that are willing, to be coached, which was awesome at the time. At Central for sure. Like guys were any little mistake they make, they're asking questions. Like if guys are eager and asking you questions, right, you're trending in the right way, right. And those guys were eager to get better, eager to learn, and eager to be coached.
Yeah, no, and you just got announced. I mean, just recently announced as a defensive line coach at Portland State. I mean, like, what excites you most about building the defensive line room at Portland State?
It's definitely exciting, man. I'm excited to get after it in the Big Sky. Obviously, I think, in my opinion, I think that the Big Sky is one of the top FCS conferences in the country. Right, there's a lot of great opponents in this conference. Right, it's going to definitely be a challenge, and I'm excited about it. Right, I think building this group of defensive line to get after the quarterbacks and be able to stop the run, I think would be huge in this conference. This is a really talented conference. There's really good players everywhere, right? And I'm trying to build that group of guys, right? To and they're doing a great job right now. Like my guys already texting me in the group chat. What they're already about to hang out with each other and build that bond. Right? I'm just trying to find the right guys to come in to keep building on that. Again, I'm big on bringing the right character guys that are looking right for one goal, right? 18 guys in that room for one common goal, right? And that's what I'm trying to build and continue to bring the right guys into my room.
Yeah, no, you know what's interesting? I feel like I had a coach that it made me feel some type of way my freshman year at Oregon State for a little bit. But now that I'm older and I'm done, it's I understand exactly what he was talking about. When I was talking with him, he was talking to all the incoming freshmen that came in. There's 26 of us, and he kind of was just giving us the real. He's like, hey, by the time you're a senior, statistically, there's only going to be about 10 or 13 of you guys left that are actually still here, whether that's you're going to quit, transfer, different things happen. And I was kind of like, okay, whatever. Like that didn't make me feel any kind of way. And then he kind of just kept going and kind of talking about it. And I was like, man, like this is real, to where the point that he said that really hit me was like, congratulations, you made it. You're on scholarship. Guess what? Now we're looking at the next class to try to replace you. And I was like, whoa, like that's how quick it happened. So kind of talk about that. Like, hey, it's not some big, like I signed to Portland State Wednesday, the first Wednesday of February, and I'm like, oh, I made it. Ta-da. It's like, no, like that's when it starts.
That's when it starts. No, that's definitely when it starts, man. And you're always trying to find the next guy, right? Like, yeah, you bring in the right guy, you bring in the right guy to continue on, the standard that we're building, but we're always trying to find the next guy because this football game is quick, man. Like, as you say now, like, we're in a different day and age of football with the portal, guys get hurt, guys decide to leave. So you're always got to, be able to prep yourself for just in case for future happenings, right? Injuries, whatever the case may be, portal, right? You always got to find that next guy ready to go. And, there's, like you said, there's every year there's hungry, eager, good freshmen, right? Same with the portal, same with junior college kids. There's always a hungry kid willing, to get into that position, right? So you can't get comfortable. Is what I tell my guys. Just because you're committed and you're in, you ain't make it yet, right? You ain't made nothing, right? You ain't made any plays. You haven't showed anything on the field, right? Like now you're here. Now let's get to work, right? Let's see what I can. My goal is to get you to that spot, right? Get you to that guy to make those plays on the field, right? But you didn't make it. You ain't made it yet, right? You got a lot of work to do. And that next guy behind you is hungry,
Yeah,
right?
no, 100%. And kind of talk to the fact, I know you just got married this past summer, your beautiful wife. And I mean, like, I know you guys are going to eventually want to start your own family and kind of get that going. But I mean, if you had a son that was in junior high right now and like had real aspirations of playing at the next level, like what would be the non-negotiables like you demand from him to starting today, like in the classroom and training
Mm.
and how he carries himself, like to put himself in the best position to get recruited?
I would say the first thing is definitely starting the classroom, right? And I think that that's that kind of gets underlooked for most of these kids, right? And I could kind of use my story a little bit, but I was one of those guys, man. Like I overlooked high school and I had to take the junior college route, right? The junior college route woke up my eyes a little bit, and I was able to get my grades up, and that's how we became teammates at Fresno, right? But I think grades is one of the biggest things for for the young guys coming up, focusing on that school. Like coaches, high school coaches aren't saying that right just to say it. They're saying it for it's a meaning behind it, right? They're looking out for your future because that's what the college coaches are looking for, right? Guys with the proper grades, and I think the classroom is really big, right? And it's also tips I could give high school kids, man, is just continue to continue to update your tape and update your film, right, is one of the biggest things, right? There's kind of guys that that kind of get left behind just because their films aren't updated, right? And we got to find times, and there's people out there to help you. There's mentors, there's counselors, there's coaches. I try to give guys tips even when I'm at the high schools myself, and give those guys tips on how to make a film, right? When to get it updated, do it every week, like make it a priority. I'm not asking you to just sit there, all day and make it. But, after a game on a Saturday or Sunday and you got some downtime, update that film, right? Keep updating it each week. And then by the time it's the end of the year, you just upload the entire film. And there's kids who make mid-season highlights, which I think is awesome. And then they put it together at the end. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, no, and that's so important too, because like I've literally, as a player, I remember walking into like the recruiting like personnel department before, and they looked up a kid, looked at it, didn't have tape for like the last year and a half, and they literally
Yeah,
just clicked to the next kid. Like unless you're
100%.
like a superstar and just have
Yeah,
outrageous numbers, like you're not getting away with that. Like
for
updating
sure.
your tape every single week is important, just so that they have something to evaluate. And I know something I felt like I've learned since doing this podcast that we're trying to teach all the parents is like a lot of times you get recruited not just on your ability, but like your projectability, because you might not be a day
100%.
one starter, but it's like, hey, what does his ceiling look like? It's hard to fully grasp unless you've played Division One, knowing like, okay, if you go Division One, you're used to being the guy making the plays. Then it's a wake up call when you get there and there's
Yeah,
a 22-year-old that's been in college for 5 years, and you're like,
yeah,
whoa, like especially in the trenches. I wasn't even in the trenches. I was a skill guy,
yeah,
so I'm like,
yeah,
it's a lot different. Like this is a grown man that I'm going up against. So kind of
yeah.
talk about, I mean, just the high school to college transition, just the physicality side of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the trend again, and kind of like you nailed it on the head. Like not every high school kid is going to come in, developed and ready to play. And those freshmen are special, right? And those guys are playing at those big schools for a reason, right? Coming in as a true freshman, but the physicality piece, right, is it's big. And I always, I'm a big believer, right, is for when it comes to redshirting. Right, I'm a big believer in that, and that helps the kid, right, catch up to the pace of the game and build his body the right way over the years, right? If there's a freshman that could come in ready to play right away, I'm all for it, right? But if he needs that year of development, right, we call just kind of work with Coach Fisk. We kind of say we're going to trade your worst year for your best year. That makes sense. So we're trading that, and it's not saying you're a bad freshman, right? It's pretty much saying that hey, like you got to get developed, get caught up to the game, get caught up to the speed, right? And I'm not going to put you out there versus 23-year-olds as a freshman when your time now is your fourth or fifth year. You're developed, you're ready, you caught up to the speed of the game, and now that becomes your best year, right? So essentially, it's just trading your worst year for your best year. That's really all it is when it comes to redshirting. And we've had luck with, kids sitting out a year, get caught up to the playbook, caught up to the game, developed in the weight room, and that's their redshirt freshmen. They're ready to go. And that's awesome, and I'm a big believer in that, and Coach Chris kind of got me a believer in, trading your worst year for your best year.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I've never heard that. That's really smart. I know, same thing. You actually played with Michael Walker, and he had said something I never heard either before. He was saying that if you're playing in the NFL, you played Division One, essentially at the college level, really in NFL. He was saying you essentially have your PhD in football at that point. And I was like,
Yeah,
man, like you can't expect as a freshman to get your PhD. Like you got, there's
for
baby
sure.
steps here, bro. You got to,
Baby
you got,
steps.
you got to baby steps, learn how to watch film, learn how to break it down. And I mean, just it's such a privilege even to get to that spot. I mean, most athletes listening to this and parents, I would guess, aren't 5-star Alabama kids that have every single offer in the world right now, to where
Right.
it's like, if I'm not on a national recruiting radar and I want to get Coach Pat's attention, like, how does that actually get done?
Um, I would say the biggest things are, camps are big, right? We're a big believer in going to camps, right? Social media is obviously, we're in that day and age of social media. Twitter is one of the biggest things, all right? And, when I go on these high school visits or, whatever kind of visits that we do go on, but I think camps and Twitter is kind of the main contact, right? And then
Yeah.
if we get
What
that
kind of
chance to get
camps would you say?
and I mean, really any kind of camps. We've had team camps that we go to where it's true padded, right? Individual camps where guys are, doing their sessions, their drill work, their one on ones, right? Those kind of works, and we've done a good job of going and attending those camps, especially in the summer camps. Like those summer camps are huge, right? June summer camps is kind of where you start to expose the next class of who's that guy you want to grab, right? And I could kind of say this, like we've had luck at Central as well, finding pretty good players at camps, right? Kids that we never even seen before, or even seen their film, and we saw this kid at a camp, and we're like, who's that guy? Let's recruit that guy, right? And those exposures I think is really good, for a lot of kids, because film is obviously great exposure, but the more you expose yourself, right, as a recruit, right, you put yourself out there in that effort, right, it shows and it helps those kids out a lot.
Yeah, no, and I think the big distinction too there is going to camps where like Coach Pat and his staff could actually evaluate you, to where it's
Correct.
like those are the right camps. Because even I don't even know if I've ever told this story. Like the way I got offered to Oregon State was that exact reason. I wasn't even on the radar. I went
Yeah.
to a Oregon State camp on Sunday that was in California, in Northern California.
Yeah.
They liked me. They invited me on a visit. I did a workout on Wednesday, and I got offered after that camp. It's like, but I wasn't even on the radar, and that's how
Exactly.
fast it happened.
It
Camp
does.
on Sunday in California, drive up to Oregon on Wednesday, do a workout, kind of a camp session they had, get offered right after. And it's like I wasn't even on the radar. So the power of camps, I mean, I'm always going to be a huge advocate for camps because that's how my recruiting process kind of got taken off. And just like kind of on that note, and you've kind of talked about email and social media and camps and film. I mean, like, what's the right way to reach out to a college coach?
Again, same thing. Twitter, right, is one of the biggest things, right? Emails are great too, right? And I've been doing a pretty good job of trying to track onto those emails, right? Because you get a lot of them. You do get a lot of emails, but that's a good way to do it, right? Just kind of keep exposing yourself and sending those emails, sending those DMs, right? And we're gonna find a way to find you. Right, and we gonna do a great job of continuing looking through and trying to find that right guy in that class, right? And we have those emails, on our social medias, on our roster, right? And you guys can, go through those emails, go through those Twitters, and if you can find a way to get our contact from other coaches, or if we decide to give you that contact, there's ways you guys can stay in contact with us as well. But social media, online, follows, Twitter, emails are the biggest things. Just get in contact with
Yeah.
coaches.
I've always let athletes and parents know when they talk to me, it's like, hey, have your social media be so clean. Like your social media is essentially your resume, like have your
Correct.
resume set up, have your NCAA ID, your GPA, your highlight tape. You're able to get message, your account's not private. And like, trust me, if you follow Coach Pat after this
Yeah.
and you're a baller, he'll follow you back. It's like if you're
Easy,
doing your thing,
easy,
if they're interested, they'll follow you back and message
easy,
you, they'll find a way.
easy, easy.
No, so that's kind of a big thing. But for you, I mean, like, what would you say? What's a common mistake you see athletes make when trying to promote themselves?
A lot of the times, I would say, again, when it comes to film, kids try to promote themselves, but don't really have anything to show, right? When it comes to film, right? And I think that's one you always got to have that ready, right? You got to have the transcripts ready, like like kids kind of know what the process is going to look like now, right? You want to kind of be, a little bit organized and help us out a little bit too. But we're gonna try our best to be patient, right? That's the goal of recruiting is being patient with a lot of these kids. But I think just being able to have things ready and prepared, right, already shows you your preparedness, right? Just being able to be prepared, and I think just having a film ready. Before you even approach us, or have the link and everything organized, I think helps out a lot. And it eliminates a lot of processes for us, right? A lot of the stuff that we're viewing, there's so much film that we're looking at, and if we could do less clicks as coaches, that would be helpful, right? And we could able just, here we go, turn on that film and we're watching you, right? And I would say too, and when kind of, a little hint I could give kids too, like if you're putting on film, just make sure that arrow is right on you, right? Kids kind of struggle to put that arrow on the right person. The bubble's so big and we don't know who we're watching. And, we want to make sure that arrow is on you. Like we know who you are, like make that number shown, right? And I think that'll help a lot of kids out.
Yeah, no, and I feel like a very simple, you got me thinking about highlight tapes now. Something that I always tell quarterbacks, or because I played quarterback, but it's like your highlight tape. The quickest way to make your highlight tape more visible and coaches want to watch it is make it quick. Not as far as like don't speed it up. I'm talking about if there's one play, if Coach Pat's watching your tape and you make a great pass rush, you get a sack, don't make that play 1 minute long until the next play. Make the play how long it is, cut it to the next play, and then like get as many. Like if I'm watching your tape for a minute, I should be able to get a good amount of plays in watching you kind of do that. It shouldn't be like 2 plays. I've literally told the kid that while I was watching his tape, like, listen, bro, I've been watching your tape for 2.5 minutes and I've watched 3 plays. Like the coach is not going to like this. So kind of talk about that. Like you guys don't have 5 hours to sit there and watch tape every single day.
100%. And I kind of leave this note too with those guys, man. Like, make it quick. All right. Put your best plays first. Right. It's one of the biggest things. Like, we're not going to sit there and watch a 10-minute highlight tape. Like, you got to understand, we're watching lots of kids, highlight tapes per day. Right. So, make it, 3 to 4 minutes, but put your best plays first, man. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm trying to tell the kids when it comes to putting their film, right? Chop it up. Don't make it too long. I know you got a cool celebration when you make a play, it's fine. Cut it out. I'm watching the play, not your celebration. All right. So I always tell those guys, make it short, put your best plays first, right? You're trying to market yourself, right? If you're a receiver, don't put your 70 play touchdown at the end of the film. Right, put it at first play, man. I think it's cool. Let's show off your speed right away. All right, let those guys see your breakaway speed. Right, so I think putting your best plays first, right, putting it all up front, show them how well you run. Right, like I think especially for the big boys, I like seeing them chase down running backs. Like put that on there, put the effort plays on there. Right, I want to be able to see you run. Right, stuff to run. I know you can pass rush, but how well can you run? Right, put those effort plays on there, and I think it's huge when it comes to making those film.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think just relating back to like both of our stories, I mean, we're both kind of Tedford products, the standard and having all that kind of stuff. But I mean, just like there's a saying, I mean, like you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your environment. Like in your opinion, I mean, like how much does being around the right teammates and coaches and mentors impact an athlete's development?
Well, it does a lot. Being around the right group of guys helps a lot. And if you can find the right guys, the right coaches to bring a kid up, even when he's down, those are the kind of people you want to work around, right? And I think the environment for a kid is huge, right? Again, when we talk about culture, right? I mentioned it earlier. That's why we bring in the right culture kids, right? Because we want to make sure the environment alone, the locker room alone, is tight. We all in the locker room, we're sitting together. We have one goal, and that's to go win football games on Saturday. Right, and we all have that one common goal, and that's what we try to do with bringing the right character kid, right? And I kind of mentioned that a lot, right? But that's just kind of what we do to keep that environment tight, right? So that when those guys come in and they're playing for each other on Saturday, it shows, right? They know they got their boys back and their boy got their back, and that's how they're playing, right? Instead of knocking them down and pointing fingers, those guys like, I got you, I'm gonna lift you up, right? If something happens, if a corner, decides to give up a deep ball, the D line's not gonna point fingers. They're gonna be like, we're gonna get the quarterback for you next play. And those are the kind of guys that we try to bring in to lift that kid up, to give him more confidence.
Yeah, no, and I feel like there's nothing like being in a locker room where everyone fights for everyone. As far as just, I remember back in 2018, we were playing on that team. Like if I threw a pick or something happened, I remember you coming up to me, Michael Walker, Jeff kind of slapped me like, "Hey, we got you, bro. We're gonna get it back."
Sure.
I'm like, all right, you know what? Like we're riding for each other. Like or you guys make a big play, I'm on the sideline screaming for you guys. And it's like just creating that brotherhood and having that teammate. I think that's just. It's hard to replace. And like for you, I mean, like how are you pushing your defensive line to just create that brotherhood? Because we both know that if you're just there to play football, you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Like, how are you challenging your guys to create that kind of brotherhood, and what expectations can people have if they step on campus with Coach Pat?
Man, it's really, again, you talking about the brotherhood, right? I tell those guys it's about, playing for each other is one of the biggest things, right? You got to play for those seniors and, the guys ahead of you that, came through the program and the guys that are coming behind you, right? The guys that are, heading, your way is one of the biggest things. And I kind of tell those guys is, it's, you want to build that brotherhood in the locker room. Like, and I think the tightness, of the group that they're working with, right? I think the biggest thing for me is just, making sure those guys are playing again for each other, for a team, right? Having one common goal, right? And my room has done a really good job previously of not, being selfish. Like if I were to make a move or make a substitution, instead of guys, pouting, they're like, "Hey, you're up. Let's go do this thing," right? And trying to find those guys, I think is awesome. Right, and it kind of worked out well for me, right? The previous schools, and I'm continuing to try to bring that here at Portland, right? Bringing that again, the right guy into the room who's willing to play with each other to have one common goal.
Yeah, no, and kind of talk about that. I mean, so at Oregon State, I've been on winning teams and I've been on losing teams. I feel like
Yeah.
the difference, if you just look on paper at the teams, there's really not that much of a difference between the two.
Hmm.
But there are certain subtleties between why guys are playing and why they're not playing. And obviously, I'm sure your perspective has changed a little bit from a player like, okay, maybe this guy's not playing because of X or not playing because of Y or whatever the case might be. Like, in your opinion, like, what are some things that are the difference between a guy seeing a lot of playing time or just like, man, I just can't trust this guy and put him in the rotation as much as I want to?
Yeah. The preparation is huge when it comes to kids that are well prepared, right? And I want to make sure the well prepared guys are on the field, and the guys that are slightly behind you try to build those kids up. I'm harder on that next group than I am on that first group, right? I want always want my second group or my third group to be as good as the first. I'm always pushing those guys, right? But I think the biggest thing is trying to find what can I do to better that second group or for them to get caught up to that first group. I want those guys to be competitive each and every practice, right? I do want them competitive, and I think the preparation of who's prepared, right? You know who prepared the right way, right? And that's what you kind of find in those starters. And don't get me wrong, there's certain guys that might just have a little bit more juice, and that's okay. Right? There's guys that starters that might have a little bit more get off and more quickness, but that doesn't mean that second guy isn't prepared. So I've had ways of trying to do that rotation with the ones and the twos, especially at the D line, right? Your ones and twos have to be what I consider 1As and 1Bs, how many times we rotate. You know what I'm saying? So I don't even try to consider them ones and twos. I try to go 1A and 1B, right? And with D line, I want to play eight guys if I can, right? Rotate those guys, right? I want my twos to be as good as the ones when it comes to playing great D line. You got to keep those big boys fresh, right? Because you got to understand they're stopping the run, they're rushing the passer, and they got to run the football and chase these fast receivers and running backs and quarterbacks. So you want those guys to play hard for you for 4 or 5 plays and keep those guys in that rotation.
Yeah, no doubt, and I think I'm glad you threw in fast quarterbacks in there too, because looking at me, I was fast enough. I wasn't super fast, but
For sure.
fast enough. But no, I think kind of transitioning a little bit too. I mean, obviously, the last kind of things I want to talk about with you today is just kind of life beyond the game. I mean, football's open doors. I mean, but character is kind of ultimately going to determine like how long those doors stay open. And
Yeah.
I mean, just for you, I mean, like, you're a young coach in the game, and obviously you're going to be able to relate to the guys a lot more than a coach who's maybe 55, just because you're fairly fresh out of the game and you can relate to these guys. But I mean, how do you try to prepare your players for life after football, not just the next game?
Yeah, I mean, life after football. I'm big on making sure as guys are coming in and playing the game of football, like I still want them at the end of the day to get their degree. I care about that, right? We talk about football and life after football. If you get that opportunity to play at the next level, I'm all in, right? But at the end of the day, my goal for you, right, is to get that degree, right? If I bring you in as a kid, as a freshman, and you leave, our university without a degree, I feel like I failed you, right? And that's not what I'm here for, right? I'm here to give you a great football experience on the way to get your degree, And that's kind of what my goal and my mindset is. And that's kind of how we are as a staff, right? Our goal is to bring you in, give you a great football experience on the way to go get that degree. So, if you get that chance at that next level, we're all in, we're willing to help, right? If we, decide to give you an opportunity to coach, we're all in, as well as with that. Right. But if, something else, another career that you decide to do after football, we want to make sure you at least leave Portland State with something in your hand.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I mean, just it's such everyone's trying to transition away from the whole student athlete kind of aspect of it. But it's like in reality, dude, I mean, I got my school paid for, and one day I remember I was bored and I broke it down. I would have had to pay over $200,000 to get that. And I mean, my family, we made enough, but not enough to pay $200,000 for a degree. So it's like, let's not forget about kind of the scholarship aspect of it. And obviously there's NIL and all this stuff that kind of pops up, but it's like, man, just football will end. If you're lucky to play at the next level in the league, I mean, we both have mutual friends that are in the NFL that are, some are lucky enough to still be playing, but a lot of them, it's like, if you're lucky, you get 3 or 4 years. And so say you graduate at 23, you're 26 now. Like you got a lot of life left to work, and you better hope that you didn't burn any bridges and you're respectful to people and you kind of did everything you can to, hey, when I come back and talk to Coach Pat and there's a GA spot open when he's at Portland State, like I hope he saw my preparedness that, hey, that spot's open. I know your work ethic. I know what you're about. I'd love to have you in the room. So I think that's what it's all about ultimately. And just for you, I mean, just kind of thinking that I know you're just in the grind of the portal and signing day and a lot's going on. But I mean, like, what does success look like for you? I mean, 5 or 10 years down the road as a coach and as a man?
Man, I mean, success for me is, getting to the biggest, to the top level as I can as a defensive coordinator one day. Right. And just, me, being a D-line guy, I felt like I've learned a lot. Right. I'm learning the skill positions, of course, a position I've never played. Right. Never knew what cover 3 was when I was playing D-line at Fresno. Right. I just knew how to get after the quarterback. Now being able to expand my game and understand coverages, understand schemes, right. Understand formations, right. Understand run fits, right, is one of the biggest things, right? Why we're putting certain guys in a run fit. But just being able, 5, 10 years from now, the goal is to be a defensive coordinator, right? At the highest level, right? And I think that's kind of the future that I see for myself. But right now, right, is, next 5 years, be the top D-line guy if I can, right? And continue to produce guys as I'm coaching them each and every day, right? But I kind of see myself, in that progression of working my way to be a DC. And if a head coach, opportunity pop up, man, I'm all in, right? But I got, again, same with coaching, man. It's about how well you're preparing to get to that next level, right? So you got to be able to work, understand, certain positions, right? You're learning new position groups that you never played before, right? And how well you master those position groups, right? And it gets you to that coordinator role. Then you master the game and situations and being able to build those character building things with a team, right? Learning to lead a room. That's how you get those head coach characteristics. And I want to be able to get that one day.
Yeah, no, I love that, bro. And I love that you know that about yourself already too, because I feel like I've asked that question to a couple guys and they're like, I don't know, like I just want to do what I'm doing right now. It's like, man, but it's cool to see that you kind of have that in your goals and your aspirations already. And kind of the final question I have for you, bro. I mean, we started this conversation, I mean, obviously as former teammates and chased the championship together, and now you're out here building, I mean, the next generation of Vikings. But I mean, like if there's a kid listening right now whose dreams are playing college football, but doesn't think he's like good enough yet, I mean, like what's one thing he should start doing tomorrow to move one step closer to that goal?
And just keep working, man. I think don't give up on yourself too soon, right? Like you keep working, you keep trusting, your high school coaches that are telling you the right thing, right? And you keep trusting those college coaches that are swinging by and give you good advice, right? Don't give up on yourself, man. And just, again, you have time, right? If you're a young kid, you're a sophomore, junior, like you have all the way into your senior season, man. It's not over, right? It's not over till it's over. Like you still have opportunities, right? Again, like myself, like I had opportunities at the JC level. It's never over, right? So just keep pushing, keep working, and keep grinding, and those opportunities, will pay off.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I feel like for me, it's so crazy to look back on my journey because obviously hindsight's always 2020, but it's like, man, I don't feel like I did anything special. And I feel like you could probably agree to it. It's like, I just showed up every day, bro. It's like coaches told me what needed to get done. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. then maybe I struggled with this a little bit. Let me practice it a little bit after practice or before practice, or let me roll out and do a little bit extra here, a little bit extra there. But it wasn't like I was waking up at like 5 a.m. and working out until like 10 p.m. on the weekends and just like nonstop. It's just like, hey, being thoughtful and methodical and kind of taking stuff step by step. But the last thing I'll ask, I lied, I'll ask you one more question, is that if, for whatever reason, if I forgot to hit record and this whole podcast kind of got erased, like what would be one kind of message you would want to leave with a high school parent or high school athlete?
Ooh, a good message, huh? Let's see what I would want to tell a good high school. I would say for for the parents, just kind of be there for their kid, right? And I always tell high school athletes, man, like always thank your parents, right? If they're taking you on these camps, right, taking you on these OVs and unofficial visits, right, thank them. All right, they're doing it for you, and they're doing it for a reason, right? And I think a lot of kids, kind of leave that behind a little bit. And I always tell recruits, like when they're here with their mom and dad, I'm like, did you thank mom and dad that you're on this trip? Right. And they're like, no. I'm like, well, you need to. Right. Because they're sacrificing a lot for you. You got to understand there's people like to get to where you at a Division I level. There's sacrifices that you're making. There's people making sacrifices for you. Right. And I always tell guys, like, thank those people that you're making sacrifices for. Like, even as coaches, like, the wives, like, they're making sacrifices for us. Right. It's certain things that I try to tell my guys, right? Leave those guys with those notes of, thank the people around you, right? The parents just continue to support, right? The kids as they're pushing to their career, their next level, that next journey, right? And they'll try to drag them down. But I think, again, for those recruits and those kids, just, continue to work and thank the people around you.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And Pat, I appreciate you, brother. Not just for, coaching football, but building men through it. You're one of the good ones that are out there, bro. And I can't wait to see, what you guys do at Portland State this year. Success seems like it's followed you everywhere. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that's just a credit to your process and being process oriented, and the result's always the result. So I definitely appreciate you, brother.
Awesome.
I'll try to stay in contact. But until next time, it's Athlete Country Club. Appreciate you guys for listening. God bless.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.